Hello everyone, welcome back to the Nightmare's Edge. I have a few new terrifying experiences I found on Reddit. I will be posting the authors and the links to their stories in the description. A couple of these authors would love any information that you might have regarding their experiences. So if you do have any, please check out their posts and comment. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can always email me. It'll be listed in the description. And of course, I will provide that information to the authors. And if you have a story of your own that you'd like to submit, you can also email me at the same address. Now sit back, relax, and let me tickle those inner fears. Today's first story comes to us from Running Horse 94, entitled Gettysburg Ghost. The pictures you're about to see were provided by Running Horse. These are actual photos from the location. In late fall of 2015, me and my family decided to go to Gettysburg for vacation. Being a big history lover, I was stoked to see the battlefield. The weather was amazing and the atmosphere was somber and peaceful. The first day was mostly spent at the museum and walking parts of the battlefield. Nothing really happened until we were getting ready for bed in the hotel room. My brother sat up suddenly in bed and ran to the door, opening it and stepping into the hallway. We asked him if he was okay, and he asked us if we heard men yelling orders and cannon fire. We had 4 people in the room, and no one else heard anything. The next day, while we were on the battlefield near Devil's Den, it felt as if someone was constantly following behind us, even though no one was there. That second night, as we got ready for bed, there was cannon fire, and this time, we all heard it, including some of the other guests who came out into the hallway. The third day, we were at Little Round Top, and I decided to crawl between some rocks to get a perspective of what the sharpshooters would have seen. While laying on my stomach, I felt someone lay a hand on my shoulder and whisper in my ear, "I see him." At first I thought it was my brother until I heard him call my name from a statue that sits off to the side. It was so odd. After that, I kept feeling as if I would turn around and bump into someone. It got to the point I turned around, and I felt extremely cold, as if I had walked into a freezer. My mother, who was beside me, also noticed the temperature difference and commented how odd it was. Later that evening, about an hour before the sun went down, me and my mom took the car to see a couple things and take some pictures. We were at high water mark and thinking about what could have been going through those poor men's thoughts. It brought tears to our eyes, and we both heard a man say, "Don't cry for me, lass." The atmosphere shifted and it felt extremely peaceful and relaxing. It was as if whoever it was trying to comfort us. We both sat there for a while until it was time to go. As we walked back to where we parked the car, there was a couple sitting beside their car. They said hello and we had small conversation, and in mid-conversation we all stopped talking. From the battlefield we all heard fifes and drums. The couple seemed unnerved and they got up, said goodbye, and got into their car. We decided that it was time to leave since it was almost dark and no one should be on the battlefield at night. Our last day there, we toured Eisenhower's home, and then toured Big Round Top. Eventually, my brother and father wanted to go back to the hotel, so we took them back. We decided to go back to Big Round Top, seeing as it was our last day to explore. We parked the car and walked into the forest. We had about 2 hours before the sun set, and no one was around. About 20 minutes into the hike, my mom stopped, and I was about to ask what was wrong when I heard footsteps. There were multiple footsteps that we could hear, and they stopped. Then, when we started walking again, the footsteps would start up again. At one point, we decided to turn back, and my mother needed a rest, so we sat on a boulder. It suddenly got quiet, to the point there were no crickets, birds, or any other forest sounds. Then all at once, we heard horses snorting and trotting and galloping past us. Then it full-on sounded like we were in the middle of a battle. Bugles sounding, clashing of swords, muskets firing, and lots of men yelling. We were in complete shock, and it lasted for a couple minutes. Then it all stopped. We started talking about what we had just witnessed, and then heard several men call out, "Help! Help me! I don't want to die!" and crying. It was so overwhelming that we booked it back to where we parked the car, and when we got to the car, a park ranger was there. He took one look at us and asked, "What did you all see or hear?" We explained what had happened, and he told us that he had stopped a man he thought was a Union soldier reenactor. He had told him he wasn't allowed on the battlefield after dark. He said the man smiled and with a shrug carried on. He said he was about to stop him again when the soldier walked through a tree and disappeared. We went back to the hotel, and the next morning we were eating our breakfast in the dining room area before checkout. Me, my mother, and brother heard a bugle playing, but no one else in the dining area seemed to hear it. It was all a bunch of strange events, but we did go back and we had even more experiences the second time. We have several pictures where you can clearly see soldiers on horseback and soldiers around the different spots on the battlefield. If you get a chance, it's a great place for history and the paranormal. The second story comes to us from Valkyrie 5672, The Shadow at My Cabin. First of all, excuse my English. I don't usually write or talk English, therefore it's not that good. Now, to what I experienced. I think it was maybe around 3 years ago. I remember it was winter because it was really cold and snowy outside. I was left alone in me and my family's cabin while the others went Christmas shopping for food and last-minute packages for some friends or something. I don't really remember why they went out, but that's not so important. My point is, I was all alone in our cabin playing some games on my phone while listening to some music on the radio in my room on the first floor of the cabin. I remember that I suddenly got cold and went to get a blanket that was on our sofa. Just when I was about to get up and grab the blanket, I saw some kind of shadow in my side vision. I didn't really care that much because I thought that maybe it was just my imagination playing a trick on me, because I really didn't like being alone in general, and especially not in a cabin on a mountain in the middle of winter. I got the blanket and went back to my room to play some more games. About 1 hour passed and I had forgotten all about the strange shadow, but then I saw it again. This time it stayed in my side vision for about 3 to 5 seconds before it went away again. I got a little creeped out about it since I was the only one in the cabin at the moment. Therefore, I decided to lock the door to my room. Right after I locked the door to my room, I heard some kind of crying upstairs on the second floor of the cabin. At first, I thought it was my little sister, who was about 3 years old at the time. She used to cry a lot, and I asked out loud, "What's wrong? Did you hurt yourself?" I heard her answer, "Yes, I fell while playing with my dolls. Can you come upstairs and help me?" I unlocked my door and headed towards the stairs when it finally hit me. I was alone in the cabin, so whatever the fuck was upstairs could not be my little sister. I sprinted out of the cabin wearing only a t-shirt and my dad's slippers, and it was freezing cold outside. I stopped running about 150 meters from my cabin and looked at it from a distance. In one of the windows on the second floor, I could see a shadow just standing still. I got the feeling it was staring at me, even though I could not make out any eyes. I stood there outside my family's cabin in the freezing cold, maybe about 30 minutes, and cried until my family finally arrived. My mom and dad asked me what was wrong, but I didn't want them to think I was crazy, so I just made up a story. I don't remember what I told them, but they seemed concerned about me. One thing I remember is that I talked my mom and dad into driving me to my grandparents' cabin, because I refused to enter the cabin. Ever since that day, I refuse to join my family when they go to our family cabin. It's really hard to explain, but the feeling I got that day in the cabin can only be described as not wanted. Like someone or something wanted to harm me, and I have nightmares about the shadow figure thing even today. It's haunting my dreams. If anyone on Reddit have experienced something similar, or might have any idea what this thing is and how I can stop having nightmares about it, can you please leave a comment? I would really appreciate any advice you guys have. Our third story comes to us from Snoo Suggestions 6709, entitled, The Top Hat Man That Plagued My Early Childhood. The pictures you're about to see are the actual photos of the drawings. For context, this haunting, I guess I'll call it, happened from about 6 to 10 years old or so. I lived in a relatively new home in a small neighborhood in western Massachusetts. I had a loving family, and apart from what I will talk about here, a normal childhood. I'll start by saying I don't remember too much from my early childhood, but these experiences stand vividly in my mind as if they happened yesterday. It started off when I was about 6, with terrifyingly vivid reoccurring nightmares. Nightmares that seemed out of place for a young kid who was never allowed to be exposed to violence or horror content. One common one included me trying desperately to jump on my bed while a large snake slowly approached me from the hallway. I would feel pure and unadulterated terror as it keeps getting closer and eventually struck me, to which I would wake up in a sweat. One of the worst ones is where me and my father would be standing in front of a hallway that branched off to the left, and led into my parents' room. 5 to 10 humanoid-like creatures would bound out of the darkness of the hallway and proceed to eat both me and my father alive. I could hear him screaming as they reached him, and when they eventually reached me, I would wake up tingling where the humanoids had first bit down onto me. Keep in mind, I was very young when these dreams began, but they persisted for the next 4 years. Now, dreams alone are not enough for me to get on Reddit for the first time and pour out my childhood trauma to strangers. I remember I began to feel like I was being watched in my bedroom at night. It seemed like the darkness in my room became oppressive, and I would be filled with pure dread and terror. Although I didn't know what, it felt as if something was about to happen. Like every molecule in that room had stopped moving at once. This is when I first saw him. My bed was situated to where my head was against the wall, and the foot of my bed pointed towards a window. To the right was the door leading into my room on the same wall as my head was against. Just to the left of that was a door on the adjacent wall leading into a Jack and Jill bathroom I shared with my sister. There was just enough light from the window that I could see the outline of a tall black figure with the outline of a top hat sitting on its head. I don't fully remember what his face looked like, as this was at least 10 years ago, but I do remember seeing some sort of liquid reflecting light where his face would have been. I quickly ripped the covers over my head and sat there frozen with terror, unable to move. This went on for many, many months. Every time that sense of dread filled me, I knew he was there, but would not dare look for fear that he would attack me. There were a few times I was so convinced I was not going to make it, I screamed for my parents and they always came running to find nothing. My dad would always tell me, "Who's the scariest thing in this house?" To which I would lie and tell him it was of course my strong gusto father. He always assured me nothing would happen to me while he was there, but I knew if this thing wanted to do me harm, there was nothing he could do. Up to this point, by about 8 years old, the nightmares had become more graphic and appearances more frequent, always filling up that doorway just standing, watching. Up to this point, I had never been physically touched or attacked by it. That was until one night I was bunkered down beneath my sheets, and that familiar feeling of dread washed over me. I froze in my bed with the same feeling of anticipation, only this time something would finally happen. There was a scraping noise that I could tell came from the bathroom, and suddenly, my leg was grabbed through the covers. I freaked out, bawling, crying, and beelined to my parents' room where I stayed for the night. I was never touched again, but he was there most nights until we moved states when I was 10. Of course, I tried to explain what was happening to me, but it was always brushed off, and I eventually stopped talking about it, as no one believed me, and I did not want to scare my little sister any more than I had already. Fast forward to 2 years ago, when I was 18, sifting through old storage boxes filled with my old school drawings and notebooks my parents had kept. I was flipping through a school notebook filled with grammar practice and such, when my heart sank. There, on my school notebook, was a drawing of the Top Hat Man. I practically shoved it down my parents' throats while shouting, "See, I told you it's that fucking Top Hat Man." My parents went pale and profusely apologized for not believing me. They even went as far to ask me if I needed counseling. In reality, I was relieved that I had some proof, and today, I absolutely love horror as a genre. I guess maybe because it gives me a feeling of control I never had as a kid. If anyone has any questions or insights to offer me, be more than welcome. If you had a similar experience, please tell me about it. I'm going to try and attach the pictures I took of my elementary school notebook, but like I said, it's my first time posting here and I'm still not entirely sure if I'm doing this right. And our final story comes to us from Lindsay2983, entitled, Family Curse or Demon Entity. Hello everyone. I am hoping to get some advice or feedback in regards to my situation. My father's side of the family has a lot of mental illness and bad history. My father and his sisters, my aunts, grew up in a home that was absolutely from a horror movie. The paranormal activity was so bad. My dad told me stories of him seeing people walk towards him with their arms reaching for him every night in his room. Absolutely traumatic things. His father, my grandpa, was very sick mentally, and his mother was always bedridden with illness. It was a rough childhood for them. My aunts have always told me that we have a family curse that would affect all women in our family and cause them to die young and make them really ill. I always believed their scary stories, but in regards to the curse, I always rationalized it as just mental illness that plagued our genetics. As I've gotten older, I am starting to realize that there is something to this. As a child, I was always very aware of things around me. I was having paranormal experiences as a young child that were terrifying, and nightmares that I can still remember vividly to this day. I always became very aware of some kind of special ability I had as a child. I would sometimes get a feeling and already know what was going to happen. I was dreaming things that would happen later on. I knew that I was very in tune with the paranormal. As I got even older, I began to notice that everywhere we moved, or if I was with any of my family, we had severe paranormal hauntings no matter where we were. My aunt's home was absolutely horrifying, and my experiences there are still very traumatic. This still happens to this day. Anyway, recently things have kicked up in high gear in paranormal activity. A few months ago, my aunt and I decided to write a book about our life and family experiences to help us heal from the trauma. Right after we began our research to write a book, horrifying, evil entities started to terrify different members of my family. My parents, my sister, my aunts, and my family. We had to immediately stop our research and focus on getting help with whatever evil thing that started to attack us. We had to call a local church for help. This was back in January of this year. My daughter is now claiming to see monsters in our house. Last night, I had a weird moment, an epiphany. What if this curse is a real thing? What if our family had a demon attached? What if this is more than that? I'm not sure what to do with this new place I am in, and I feel this is the only possible safe place to talk about this. Maybe I need a medium or someone that can tell me what this is. I am concerned for my family. This curse has claimed lives of my family, allegedly as my family had claimed, and some stories I have are very sad. And I don't know whether I should be worried or if I'm just getting old and more traumatized from my experiences than I realize. I want to thank you again for stopping in. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. Thank you to the authors for sharing. It is truly appreciated. Again, if you want to check out these stories provided or provide them any information, check the description. But until next time, remember, just because you couldn't see it, doesn't mean it wasn't watching you.